Namaste and greetings. I, Shweta Shankar, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav Evam Niti Anusandhan Sansthan, Nai Delhi. Extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI, #Web Policy Learning. Today, we are gathered here for day 5 of LPPYF Law and Public Policy Youth Fellowship 2.0 cohort. The chair for the program is Professor Vibhuti Patel, visiting distinguished professor at IMPRI, and the fellowship lead advisor and the expert legal hands-on sessions is Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigam, visiting senior fellow at IMPRI. The distinguished experts include Advocate Dr. Flavia Agnes, women's rights lawyer, co-founder of Majlis Legal Center based in Mumbai, Professor Dr. Sina Paul, she's a professor at the Department of Economics based in Mumbai, Advocate Dr. Albertina Almeida, a lawyer and human rights activist based in Goa, Dr. Kirti Bolineni, president of Vasavya Mahila Mandali, Vijayawada, Dr. Wahida Nainer, an independent researcher, gender and human rights consultant, Dr. Aksa Sheikh, associate professor, community medicine, Hamdard Institute of Medical Sciences and Research in New Delhi, and Ms. Elsa Mary D. Silva, founder of the Red Dot Foundation India and president of Red Dot Foundation USA. The conveners for this course are Dr. Simi Mehta, CEO and editorial director at IMPRI, Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigam, visiting senior fellow at IMPRI, and Dr. Arjun Kumar, director at IMPRI. Welcome everyone to this insightful discussion, and I appreciate your dedication in investing your time, energy, and commitment to gain a profound understanding of the crucial role and intricate details of legal and public policy frameworks. Furthermore, IMPRI is proud to be releasing an anthology of the first cohort very soon. This anthology consists of all the reports that fellows of cohort 1 had submitted, covering a diverse range of topics from international human rights, constitutional laws, filing of right to information, public interest litigation, nuances and awareness of laws relating to violence against women. This anthology strongly reflects research and valuable insights of the first cohort. IMPRI believes that these essays will be a valuable resource for researchers, scholars, academicians, and society at large. The reports not only delve into public issues surrounding various societal problems, but also provides practical recommendations for further research opportunities. Looking ahead, IMPRI with its LPPYF Fellows of Cohort 2.0 will also bring about a special nuanced edition of IMPRI publication titled LPPYF, an anthology on promoting human rights and ending gender-based violence. This will be an ISBN publication with our fellows as contributing authors to individual chapters. We look forward to many such submissions in this cohort and extend our best wishes to everyone. So today's session include the topics addressing gender-based violence and the way forward by Ms. Elsa Mary D. Silva, a legal hands-on session by Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigam, and following we have fellows presentation and discussions today. So to start the session, we invite Professor Vibhuti Patel for her opening share remarks. Welcome, ma'am, and over to you. Sorry, ma'am. We are unable to hear you. Ma'am, I think the network connection is poor. I think switching of the camera would be better. Okay. I think there's a network issue over there. Now we will go on with the session by Miss Elsa De Silva. She's the founder of Red Dot Foundation in India and also the president of Red Dot Foundation in USA. A warm welcome, ma'am, and over to you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm just going to share my screen. So let's take a moment because today is the anniversary of the horrific incident that took place in Delhi on December 16th, 2012. And that's really what got me started on this journey with Red Dot Foundation and Safe City. So as you know, and you're aware that Jyoti Singh was gang raped on a bus in Delhi, right? So that incident was a very triggering moment for me where I started to remember my own experiences, which I had suppressed, of being groped on a train, witnessing masturbation in public spaces, on buses, being sexually harassed at the workplace. I remember a lot of my friends also started sharing their own stories. But what was also common was that none of us had actually reported all these incidents. And so I started to dig deep because at the time I used to work in the aviation industry where I had a long career of close to 2 decades between Jet Airways and Kingfisher Airlines. And I was using historical data to understand patterns and trends to make current and future business decisions. And what I realized, if nobody is reporting sexual violence, that means there is a data gap. But if you look at the extent with which it happens, it's 1 in 3 women, according to UN Women, that experience it at least once in their lifetime. But my sample size at that time was telling me that it was close to 100%. And most of us had not reported it, right? And over the last 11 years, I've also realized that actually people don't fully understand the different forms that it can take. So there's the non-verbal forms of it, that is staring, ogling, taking pictures without permission, showing pornography, indecent gestures, including masturbation, verbal forms of it like commenting, catcalling, sexual invites, online harassment. And many of the times, this is often considered trivial. It's part of our daily routine and therefore normalized. If you take the Indian term for all these, it's called eve teasing, which in itself trivializes the experience. You also have physical forms like touching, groping, stalking, assault, rape, murder, domestic, and this can happen in public or private spaces. If it's an intimate partner, it's often called domestic violence. Many years ago, we didn't even have a term for that. And today we live in a digital world, and many of these kinds of violence perpetrate online through digital forms. It's called technology facilitated gender-based violence. And sometimes it traverses these spheres because it could be that you're groomed online and the violence occurs in the physical space, or you may be groomed in the physical space and your violence occurs in the virtual space. Often people think it's too trivial, but it can be extremely debilitating to many, affecting their choices, their movements, and impacting their health. I also want to point out that violence doesn't happen in isolation. It doesn't happen in a silo. It occurs because society allows it to thrive. You know, we talk about patriarchy, but we don't often unpack how this patriarchy perpetrates this violence, creates an environment that is conducive to continue, violating somebody's rights whilst the perpetrator gets away scot-free, right? So I've just taken from Niti Aayog's reporting on SDG 5. So, the 17 SDG goals. Number 5 is dedicated to gender equality, and every country has to report on it, right? So I'm just going to take the first line. If you see participation in political leadership, it's less than 9% at the legislative assemblies. And if you take at the national level, it's 14% that women are represented, right? If you take labor force also, women often don't opt to participate in the labor force, or they are excluded in many ways. And whilst they're reporting 33%, actually the Ministry of Statistics has even said that it's 16.1% post-pandemic. If you take the sex ratio at birth, they're reporting 899. So what it means is that there's femicide even before you're born. The girl child is not favored and therefore killed off, right? And sometime back in two states, not Uttar Pradesh, it was Rajasthan and Andhra Pradesh that had 806 female births for every 1,000 births. And you had Uttarakhand that had issued a red alert. To me, a red alert is often issued when there's a volcanic eruption, when there's a hurricane, but this, in my view, was like one of the times when it was issued because no girl child had been born for 3 months. And so when you take all of this into account, you see that India doesn't fare well on various development indices, whether it's the Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace and Security, or the World Economic Forum's Gender Gap Index, or the Human Development Index of UNDP, and even the Thomson Reuters Perception Survey. It's a perception survey that ranks India as #1 most dangerous place for women. So I started on this journey because I wanted spaces to be safe. And I do believe that there are solutions that can empower women. So 10 days after the gang rape of Jyoti Singh on 26 December 2012, we launched Safe City. What is Safe City? It's a crowd map. It's an anonymous platform for reporting people's personal experiences of sexual and gender-based violence. At the moment, it's available on Android, iOS, on web, in 15 languages. It's being used in 20 countries around the world. It has the largest collection of stories. So all those red bubbles are a collation of stories. And the numbers in that bubble tell you how many are in that location. You can zoom in right up to the street level and check out what's happening in your neighborhood. And the idea is to bridge the data gap that exists because of underreporting and allow this to help you improve your individual situational awareness of what could happen to you, what is happening around you based on people's stories, engage your communities, and also work with institutions on accountable systems. So the aim of the Safe City platform is really to gather information, that is stories and incidents that are occurring, publish them in open source format so that everyone can understand the nature and continuum of violence, study the patterns and trends by location and categories so that you can have the context in which it happens. It is in its third iteration. So over the years, we have improved upon it. And currently, it's in line with the European data standard for privacy called the GDPR. We do not collect any personal information. We do not even collect IP addresses. And we have built in an empathy layer in the UI UX so that people will feel less intimidated using the platform. So one of the feedback that we got was that even if I'm sitting in the comfort of my home and reporting, I still feel very lonely and it's triggering. So how can technology be developed in a way that can help somebody, break their silence, but also contribute towards creating a data set that can help in safer cities programming? And even if we are encouraging anonymous reporting and we don't know who's reporting, we can't help them at an individual level. So what we've done is we push information to them. So suppose I, in Mumbai, am reporting stalking, then at the end of the report, I will get the Indian Penal Code for stalking, the helplines available to me, and all the other legal resources. I will also get a nudge to go to the nearest police station or in some cases, even the hospital. All these reports are read by a human being before they are published. So my team actually reviews it. And if there's any personal information that has been inputted, we redact that. So there is no naming, shaming, and blaming. And I think that has been the biggest value add that we've had. So I'm just going to run you through how it works. So this is how the web app looks. If you go to webapp.safecity.in, you want to share your story, you can actually query it by type of assault, show incidents from a date range and a time of day. These are all the categories that we are currently mapping. You will see there's chain snatching and robbery there, but that's because initially when we started, a lot of women reported this. So we've added it, even though it doesn't technically fall under gender-based violence. We also added online harassment. So this is the help page. So you can see on the right-hand side, the Indian Penal Code for stalking, because not everybody knows the law. And the idea is, you know, should you wish to go to the police station and make that FIR, because a lot of people don't know that they can go to the police station, make this FIR. They don't even feel comfortable going to the police station, and they feel like, what if I don't know the answers to the questions that are often asked? Then we have provided that to them. In reality, most of the reportees on our platform say 90% or more have said that they do not go to the police and they do not wish to go to the police, but they want the system to change. So how do you create a change in the system if your incident is not recorded? And that's also one of the reasons why I think this data is important. So what kind of data are we collecting? In the primary form, so there are two forms that we have. The primary form is the first form. We collect what happened to you. So there's free text where people can write, and they have often written harass, just one word, or they can write, you know, as much as they want. And what is the location where this happened, the date, the time, what is your age, what is your gender. And we are also checking to see if there's any intersectionality with ethnicity, disability, sexual orientation. We've recently added religion and political reasons, or climate change, because we've got requests from various groups that are tracking the intersectionality. So if somebody fills out the primary form, they can choose to take a secondary form or exit. If they exit based on the category that they picked, we will push the help information to them. But if they choose to fill the secondary form, we collect more details on causation and correlation of that violence, you know, more information about the perpetrator, not necessarily his name, but how many people were there, were they known to you, or were they strangers, how many bystanders, what did they do, questions about the location, questions about the incident, and whether the person was willing to go to the police, why not to the police, etc. How does this data really help, you're wondering? So one is, as a starting point, if you've never reported it, never spoken about it, in a way, it's starting the healing process by acknowledging that something happened to you, right? But it's also a way for you to reclaim agency by being situationally aware. I spent a lot of time in the aviation industry as a safety instructor teaching pilots and cabin crew safety procedures. And in a way, it's a highly safe transportation because there's so much of investment in what we call situational awareness. And really, this is, you know, a tool for you to figure out, okay, what is really happening in my neighborhood? And it's not about avoiding spaces, but being better prepared. So for example, if I take Mumbai, and in Mumbai, when I look at the data, a lot of the hotspots are in and around major transport hubs, right? And the train is the most popular means of transport. It's the quickest, it's the cheapest, and most convenient. But if I am going to get groped at this particular station, not all stations, then I do want to be prepared. I can have my SOS app ready. I can have many strategies to intervene, to stop the violence, to respond to the violence, right? But also I can work with my community. All of us are part of communities. And with this data, you can help mobilize them, organize them, ask the institution like the Western Railways, who we are working with, to have better response mechanisms or prevention mechanisms in place. So I'll give you some examples. So for example, one of the insights that we have from our data is the peak is between 12 noon and 2 p.m. And often when we present this, city planners are quite surprised. Excuse me. So they're surprised because people often think that violence happens only in the night. But the kind of violence that is being mapped on our platform is mainly public space violence. And it's at a time when women are out and about doing their daily chores. And the response often by city governments is, make sure lighting is always proper. Yes, we have to have lighting, but it's not the only solution. And if there's a peak between 12 noon and 2 p.m., lighting is not necessarily the answer in that case. So what could be the answers? Therefore, it helps you understand the different forms of violence and then think of strategies to counter it, right? I'll give you an example from one of our little projects on the ground. So this is a suburb in Mumbai, one little place where we asked the young girls to share what they were experiencing. And we analyzed the data. So if you look at what are the type of harassment that they were reporting, mainly passing comments, ogling, whistling. Now, if you take these top three, often it's like, oh, why are you making a big deal about it, right? Next was stalking, touching, and then winking. Where was it happening? Very close to home. So they weren't even going far from home. It was happening very close to their home or near their school, and in some cases in lanes far from home. But what was the effect on their life? Most of them changed their route because they weren't comfortable going through these roads. Now, in some places, it's okay to change your route, but in other places, like we work in Kibera in Nairobi, which is an informal settlement, if you change your route, you can run the risk of being trafficked, which is further, it's another risk, right? But also, if your parents find you in a different part of if you're not following the correct route or the normal route and you're found in a different place, they may say you are up to no good. Because remember, the victim is always to blame, right? So and what do? They stop them from going to school. So under the guise of safety, often freedoms are restricted. And if you look at what happens second and third, it's you're only allowed to leave home with a family member or prevented from going out of home. In many cases, mobile phones are taken away, confiscated. Now see what they do with the information. They share this with their friend most of the time. So our data shows that 90% of the time, young people, when they experience this kind of violence, they tell a friend. And they are reluctant to tell a teacher or their parent because they are scared that their freedoms will be curtailed. But because they tell a friend, often the friend doesn't know what to do. And that's why, there's no action taken, right? Or it's going back to the parents. That's why also we spend a lot of time investing in young people's civic leadership to address this issue as peer responders, peer educators and first responders on their college campuses and in their community. So if you educate them on the law, if you educate them on the different forms of violence, tell them how to recognize it, show them bystander intervention strategies, help them think critically about harmful gender norms and how to challenge it, how to identify this culture through, which is promoted often by the films, ads, music that we listen to, etc. And it's a overall, curriculum where we take them through it step by step, but also help them think about how can you look at this data, think about what's showing up in the data, and then suggest solutions that might work. And so this is our systems change approach where data is at the heart of it, and then actions with communities and institutions. I'll give you some examples of how we've worked. So in Satara district, we worked with these young girls. They don't have proper transportation to take them to school. So they would be transported by mini buses to their school 1 hour away. The father of this girl, Shalini, would drop her to this mini bus stand, and it was always overcrowded. So in the van, she would be touched, groped, people would comment, and it was not a pleasant experience, which means by the time she got to school, she was already frazzled. But she has great aspirations. She wants to be a doctor, lawyer, a teacher, which means that she needs to continue her education. But she wasn't happy. And it was only when she attended our programs, she realized it was not her experience alone. Her friends were also experiencing the same thing. And they were afraid to speak up because they thought that their parents might stop them from going to school, or that they would be blamed for it. But when they found that it was a common experience, they made a representation to the adults, to their parents, and they also demanded for their own minibus. And now they have that. Because it is hard to question the data. Often we find that if you go with your own story, a single story, people tend to turn the spotlight back to you, saying you were in the wrong place at the wrong time, you were wearing the wrong clothing, and so on and so forth. Somehow it is your fault, right? But when you can show that it is not just happening to you, but happening to everyone around you over and over again, then it forces people to think about how to solve the problem. So if you take Manoj on the other hand, this was in Delhi in Lal Kuwa. Manoj and his friends had put a couch outside a public toilet complex. Now, this public toilet complex was the only toilet access that women in that community had. They weren't going out to work, so they didn't have any other options, whilst the men in their family had other options, right? Now, this toilet block also it came up as a hotspot because it didn't have proper doors, didn't have windows, the lighting was poor. And on top of that, these guys would make fun of these women, catcall them, sing Bollywood tunes, and take videos and pictures of them. So many of them started limiting their access to the public toilet. They would not consume enough water, which also is a problem, right? And when it showed up, we had a discussion. What do you want to do about it? They said, we want this to stop. So one was, of course, liaise with the stakeholder that manages the toilets, get all that infrastructure fixed. But what about the guys? So they invited the guys for a discussion, shared their stories. And Manoj, he actually was quite upset because he realized that what he was doing, which he thought was having fun, was actually distressing to many, infringing on, their rights. And so he actually signed up to be a peer educator and is now advocating for, safer cities, communities with his, and challenging his friends to not indulge in that behavior. And we've seen this over and over again, that engaging young men is actually very important and critical. In Kenya too, as I mentioned earlier, we partner with Polycom for Girls. They are in Kibera, which is a large informal settlement in Nairobi. They were using talking boxes. So they had placed boxes in different parts of the community where the children would put notes of how they were being harassed. What we helped them do was digitize this data, look at it as patterns and trends, cluster it by descriptors, big building, pink building, near the bar, etc. And having these insights allowed my partner Jane to see, okay, who do I engage in this, in the solution process? So one of the hotspots where girls were being groped on their way to school was near a mosque. She invited the imam of the mosque to come and see the data, and he was shocked with, all these stories. So he started preaching in his sermons, and being an influencer, it had an immediate impact on the young men. Further, she also decided to talk to the young men directly. They again thought that they were having fun. They were already, juvenile delinquents, maybe for petty robbery. They didn't want to go to jail again. But they did not know the law in Kenya also had a criminal sentence to what they were doing. So she explained the law to them, and that had an effect. She also used community radio to talk to the community about these hotspots in different places. And today, she's working in 55 schools in Kibera, but also she's taken this methodology to other informal settlements. In the Philippines, we've been working with the mayor's office in Quezon City through our partner Inc. So Mayor Joy Bellamont, she endorsed the app. She sent out an ordinance saying, please use it in her community. Now they have one-stop crisis centers. They have the laws. They have great facilities, but nobody was actually using it in the volume that they, the crime is occurring, right? So the smallest unit her jurisdiction is divided in is called a barangay, which is led by a barangay captain who is an elected official. One of the barangay captains was very proactively observing the map and on a weekly basis responding to the incidents that were being logged in. So say, for example, there was a few reports on domestic violence or maybe stalking. They would issue a circular inviting the community to come for a workshop on that particular type of violence, and then also talk to them about all the resources available to them. This resulted in a direct uptake in the community resources. So the point here is you can use the data to actually make existing systems more accountable, strengthen it, and make people aware that these should work for you, right? And it bridges the gap between community and also institutions. In Brazil, in Sao Lourenço, which is a small city, our partner was collecting data and they noticed the gas station become a hotspot because several women reported they were almost abducted over there. Now, everybody knew that this gas station was sketchy. Something was wrong, but they didn't know exactly what till these incidents came up. And now they have, forwarded the data to the mayor and are working with the mayor to make sure that this place is safe. So I believe some of the things that we do are really critical in our projects. One is, of course, working with men and boys. And I'm proud that 60% of our young people identify as men. They go through intensive training to understand the forms of violence, the law, and become peer educators, like I mentioned. The data is very important, whether it's a literate or illiterate community, a rural, urban community, whether they have access to a digital device or not, technology should not be a barrier, but the data must be collected. There must be ways for data to be collected and digitized so that you can look at it as a data set and made available back to the community. This is a sabha that took place in Delhi, and we do that all the time in our different locations. And if you see, this is multi-generational. There are men, there are women, there are children, there are old people. They had invited the police to talk about safety in their community. And because there was not a single report filed officially, the police actually said, this is not a problem in this place. And they gave 200 reports from our app to him, and he had to make a public retraction of his statement and say that they would increase surveillance, change beat patrol timings. And we've seen that with this kind of data, you can actually tell the police where to also place CCTV cameras as well. I feel this is a method to increase trust between institutions like the police that we often fear and we don't often trust. So how do you then, in a highly traumatic incident, go to the police to make your complaint if you don't feel like you know them, right? So over the years, we have worked with 1.5 million citizens. It's quite intense activity on the ground. We've had over 250,000 people go through our various workshops. We have 3,500 youth leaders on college campuses. We work with 300 education institutions in Maharashtra, Goa, Karnataka, and Delhi NCR. We've got, lots of reports, and most of these reports actually come from our on-the-ground programs. So whilst we say it's crowdsourced, it's actually, most of them are from our own communities. And we are very happy that this year we have 2 police commissioners that have asked us to help them reduce the violence. We're also going to start work very shortly with a city government that wants to integrate us into their violence reduction program. Of course, I've also mentioned abroad, we work with tourism authorities, police, but we also work with mayors' offices. And in Mumbai, we also work with the Western Railway. So I'm going to end over there and take any questions.
Thank you so much, ma'am. The session was incredibly informative. You shed light on crucial aspects of reporting literacy and also highlighted the fundamentals of using the Safe City app to ensure action being taken. So I'm sure participants had got insights from the various data points that you had shared in this aspect. Thank you so much for an enlightening and instructive session. So now, before we move on to the question, I request the chair, Professor Vibhuti ma'am, to share her remarks.
Congratulations, Dr. Ms. Elsa Maria de Silva, for such a brilliant and very astounding kind of work, not only locally, nationally, but also globally. Your statistics are highly impressive. I think one thing that comes out very clearly is that in the final analysis, you have to reach the community because technology can aid, and we have now very sophisticated technology for monitoring and for data generation. And that also because data is very important. Wherever there is data gap, we can't direct our fund functions and functionaries to curb gender-based violence, which is a global phenomenon. Your case studies of Philippines and Kenya and Brazil and India, they are extremely important, and I think that also makes every citizen that it is doable. If these young boys and girls they can be the change agent, then I think anyone of us with honesty of purpose can do that. We had previous sessions first, like when the player discussed Majlis's work of last 35 years, and that direct action working with survivors of the violence. Then second perspective came from Albertina's work on the legal activism, and Kitty Bolini, she also her organization, both working with the system, criminal justice system, and the survivors. And the herself was a survivor. And Vaida's work on a global human rights instrument, Shalini, Shalunism. So she hands-on sessions. They also brought out so many cases. So now you have completed the whole journey by bringing in technology that was a missing aspect in the previous few days. And I think now the younger generation is much tech-savvy. So in that situation, I think we can see more such attempts being made. In fact, in our organization, the young adolescent girls, we created an app mainly for their own network, that anytime any one activist was in difficulty, because they also feel when you work in the case on gender-based violence, you also face backlash. So whenever any of them are in danger, they should immediately use that app so that other activists would go to the gender disabled. They can combat it with a collective strength. So even adolescent girls are finding such technology extremely useful, and I think input on the new laws about the cyber crime and cyber stalking, I think they are very important. I think we should tell even more about it because IT Act has so many covenants of curbing online violence, which has become a extremely most mind-boggling and most devastating impact it has had on women of all ages and even the working women, even sexual harassment online. So you can enlighten the people about whether the system is working, about the online census, how does the system or the cyber cell responding? Is it only in the metropolis or is it in the other social media? And how, what is the function, what is your auditor? 191 is not, which
Thank you, ma'am. We will move on with the questions. We have a question by Ms. Debati Chaudhary. You may unmute.
Yes, thank you, ma'am, for that session. That was really informative. I am actually subscribed to the State City newsletter, and I just received it this morning for the month. And I was looking at the data for the global reports collected in November 2023, and I was basically trying to understand from the data that so there's a very high percentage of cases of sexual invites and ogling, staring, as when compared to more physical forms of violence of assault or even online harassment. So I was just trying to understand if I mean from this specific data, can we establish a trend for the actual crimes being committed, or in your experience, do you think this is also a trend of the kind of crimes that people would be more open to reporting about? So I was just trying to understand, like, can the trend be of the actual crimes, incidents, or the reporting? What is your take on that?
So this is what people are reporting on our site, right? What I can infer is that whilst other people might think it's too trivial, people think it's worthy to report because they are affected by it, right? So it's not trivial to the person who's reporting. And the second thing is, I feel that often because of the, the fear of going to the police, fear of the lengthy process for justice. Just today, we were at a round table and the, Napinaya Supreme Court lawyer was talking about a case that she's been working on for the last 20 years. It started in 2005 and the case is still going on. The girl has gotten married, has children, and she says, I'm not even sure that if her children get married and they have children, if the case will be over, So I think that for these kind of reports, they are not going to go necessarily to the police, right? Because it's too lengthy. But the very fact that they want to report it means that they feel it's hurtful to them, it's intimidating to them. They want the system to change. Also, all these things lead to a culture of rape, where it's okay to perpetrate violence, where it's okay to, harm somebody, infringe on their rights, violate consent, right? And if you look at the paper that Girija Borkar wrote, she's now at the World Bank, but she used the Safe City data set along with the Safety Pin data set. Safety Pin is an app to, it's for perception of safety on 9 parameters. So they look at different data, right? But in conjunction with us, Girija was able to put an economic cost to women's experiences of harassment in Delhi, and she pegged it at almost USD 300 per year, which if you calculate is almost 1 month's salary for somebody, right? And what she says is that women tend to not travel by public transport, but they prefer more private means of transport, which is why it's more expensive. But if you take sustainability, it's not going to be feasible in the long run. Everybody is looking at mass transport. So why can't we make the mass transport safe for women? Secondly, she also in that same paper talks about the compromise women make for education choices. They pick an institution closest to their home because they are not often allowed to travel or they are scared to travel far away. And we see that over and over again where you might not maybe you have a particular subject you want to master in, but that college that is offering it is far away. So you're not allowed to do that. It has a larger impact on your ability to earn, your financial independence, etc. But in the communities where we have worked, we have seen that with this data and with the community engagement around the data, girls and women are able to negotiate for greater freedoms. And this translates often to 2 more hours added to their day. 2 more hours means you can go to after, evening classes, you can take up a job, or you can just enjoy 2 more hours in public, right? They are also more confident to travel further distances away from home. So I think let's not question what people are willing to share. And we at Safe City never impose. So there are a lot of women also who come to us and say, we have a story, but we don't even want to share anonymously. So this is also underreported, what we have for sure. But at least this is data that definitely the police don't have.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I'll just clarify. I wasn't trying to say that I was considering all of those as crimes. I was not making a distinction between these cases. I was only trying to understand the trend there. And also, it is a fact that in a lot of cases, staring or stalking, all of these actually, when reported to the police, they're not considered as crimes, and they end up in rape after a point, and then the police say that why didn't you talk about it earlier? So absolutely, spaces, platforms like these are very helpful.
Yeah. And we did our own paper on our own research, on our own data. So what did we analyze? Women in buses, only in buses. What did they experience? So 50% of the women who experienced harassment on buses actually thought it was their fault, and they moved away from the harasser. They didn't say anything. In the other 50% of the cases, when they spoke up, only 50% of the bystanders intervened. So you see, what it tells you is that we need to be investing in education or PSAs, public service announcements that help people understand it, and in bystander intervention strategies. Because not in every case, even if they had the courage to break the silence, not everybody received the help that they needed. So this kind of data really can point you in where to spend public money to improve the safety.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, participants may raise their hands or put their questions in the Q&A box. Yes, Ms. Arpita.
Yeah, just making sure if I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Okay. So to add to Debarti ma'am's question, I do have another question about, underreporting and how accessible it is for people to actually come out and report. Now, the case which has been, has been a highlight in the recent years is boys' locker room. I don't know how many of my co-fellows remember this, and we also have a panelist, Arushi ma'am, who has already worked for DCW. She is an intern in DCW. I know she can give more insights. So this case where boys locker room, an Instagram group was created by some teen boys from South Delhi, and they started sharing morphed pictures and passing derogatory statements about women and their own classmates, in fact. And this was not actually reported, and the screenshots were leaked, and DCW took up the action, and then a suo moto action, and then this was reported to the Delhi police. Now, coming to my question, how accessible it is for any, women or any victim to file a report, and that has to happen in a very minuscule amount of time. Now, when we take Instagram, for example, the app itself, they have limited options for reporting. and limited options as in just sexual harassment or just, the options are very limited, and each limited option, once your report has been, selected, and you get a feedback later after you file a report, and they say the reasons which you have listed is not good enough for us to report, although the crime has already taken place and it has been an offensive action by the other side, and meanwhile the account is not deleted, no action is taken. So such huge institutions which are running such social media apps, they are not taking much actions towards this. I would like you to, Miss Elsa Marie De Silva, ma'am, to, throw some light upon this issue and kindly educate us more.
So yeah, I'm working with several coalitions to put more pressure on platforms to take responsibility, to have effective reporting mechanisms and speedy redressal, because you're right. They have bots looking at it, and often the bots, and they make it difficult, like your category might not even show up, right? And then they bring together non-profits, and I'm also, Red Dot is one of those non-profits, which is called a trusted partner. So then somebody can report to me, and then when we highlight that, they'll fast track it. But that's not absolving them for their responsibility, right? They should be more responsible. They should invest more in the safety ecosystem of their platform. So we are working with various coalitions to push for that change. But we also advocate that you use cybercrime.gov.in, and I'm sure Shalu might be touching on that, because we found that to be very effective, actually. So if the platform doesn't respond, please use that. You can use it as an anonymous complaint, or even you can give your name. And I know for a fact that they respond quickly.
Yes, ma'am, surely. Although we have seen violence is not just confined to four walls or even public places, it happens online, and it has to be reported, more immediately, the better. So thank you, ma'am, for the information.
Miss Maria, what is your take
We
on
cannot
assertiveness
hear
training?
you clearly.
Oh, about assertiveness training, do you have any suggestions? Because during 80s, that was given a great importance by the women's movement. How to make people, how to make women assert their rights. No? Hello, can you hear me?
Ma'am, your voice is not clear, actually. It's
I asked about the assertiveness training. Can you hear that? Please, sir.
I think she said some kind of training, but you know what we do? I don't know what training Vibhuti ma'am is talking about, but I find that a lot of women are very reluctant to even try out for reporting. So what in our workshops we make them do is open up the app, try reporting. Even if you don't press the final submit button, just go through the process. Open cybercrime.gov.in and go through the process, don't submit. But the fact that when you make people comfortable with how to report, it really helps them. And hopefully they will then use it, because at the end of the day, staying silent is not we cannot solve the problem if we keep silent. It's very tough. It's very traumatic, but we have to make that change happen. And we should remove the taboo from these experiences, So I think we have to make the systems work for us.
Yes. Thank you so much, ma'am. It was an incredible session. We will move on with the next session now. We have Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigam, ma'am, who will be taking a legal hands-on session. Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigam is a fellowship lead advisor and a visiting senior fellow at IMPRI. Warm welcome, ma'am, and over to you.
Thank you, Shweta. So good evening to all of you. I'll just share my screen, and today I'll be talking about the courtrooms. For past few sessions we have been talking about law and the problems with the working of law. But what is and the Indian women's movement have given a lot of focus on the lawmaking and law enforcement. But what is happening inside the courtrooms? So that we will look at that today. Yeah, so recently, some of you may be aware that Supreme Court has come out with a handbook, and it is titled as Combating Gender Stereotypes. And the Chief Justice of India, he says that it is vital that judges not only avoid relying on stereotypes in their decision making and writing, but also actively challenge and dispel harmful stereotypes. So this handbook has, it's talking about the language, and it says that the certain terms, which shouldn't be used within the courtroom. So if we have a term like eve teasing, they say that you call it street sexual harassment. A housewife is a homemaker. The feminine hygiene products are menstrual products. Mistress is shouldn't be used. It should be said. It should be said that women with whom a man has a romantic or sexual relationship outside marriage. We can't have child prostitute, where we say that child who has been trafficked. We can't say provocative clothing dress, but it should be just clothing and dresses. The term spinster shouldn't be used. It should be replaced with unmarried women. So on the list go on and on. And it also says that, certain stereotypes, such as, women are physically weaker than men. So the handbook explains that while men and women are physiologically different, it is true that it is not true that women are physically weaker, and a person's strength does not depend solely on the gender, but also on factors like genetic, nutrition, and so on. And then another stereotype is that women who work outside of the home do not care about their children. So the court says, this handbook says that it has no correlation with a woman, of love or concern for her children, and parents of all gender may work outside while also caring for their children. So these are this booklet is available on the internet. You can just go through that, and it talks about different stereotypes that, generally the court says that women are overly emotionally illogical and cannot take decisions. So in reality, a person's gender does not determine or influence the capacity for rational thoughts. And it is another thing is that, women are more passive, they're warm, they're kind and compassionate. So the handbook says that people display a wide range of personality traits, and both men and women can be passive, and compassion is an acquired characteristic. So these are the kind of recommendations this handbook is making. So it is a welcome step that Supreme Court is talking about changing the language, but this alone is not enough unless we have to take other measures along with it, such as increasing the number of women in the courtrooms, eliminating biases and myths that exist. So all those things we have to look. Now, this women's reservation bill has been passed a few months back. So it talks about 33% of reservation, and when we are 49% of women in the country. So this bill has again the caveats of census and delimitation, and it reduces a basic right to a dole or charity. So, and also if we look at the number of women judges in the Supreme Court, now till now we have only 4% of Supreme Court judges for past 75 years, and in the High Court, sorry, it could be 11 women who have reached to the hall of the Supreme Court, High Court, the percentage of women judges is merely 11.5%. Situation of women lawyers in the country is not better. Out of 1.7 million advocates registered, only 15% are women, and only 3% of women lawyers are being designated as senior advocates in the Supreme Court and High Court. So the Collegium recommends 192 candidates for the High Court, and out of this, only 19% were women. And so this is how, you can talk about language, but you also have to talk about, this kind of bias which exists in the courts. In terms of High Court judges, out of 790 High Court judges, we have 23% SC judges, 10% ST judges, 76 are OBCs, 36 minorities, and 111 women. So dominant caste men around 6% of India population comprises 70% of High Court judges. There's an article in leaflet, you can go through that. So now, if you talk about the steps which are being taken in some states such as Assam, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, and Rajasthan, they have a reservation policy for women in the lower judiciary, which is missing in the high courts and the Supreme Courts. These states have 40 to 50% of women judicial officers, but only at the lower level. Another report shows that women judges make up 36.45% of judges who enters the lower judiciary through direct examination. But at the level where when you talk about in terms of promotion and a mid-level district judges kind of that level, the women number of women are reduced to 11.75%. So the study shows that around 30 to 45% women pass out from the law colleges, but only 20% female advocates are there. And so basically law remains a male dominated profession. In the terms of state bar councils, only 2% of women are there in the bar councils. If we talk about women in police force, now the strength of women police force is very less. From 2006 to 2020, it has increased only from 3.5% to 10.5%. In several states, you may find some more percentage variation is there. So nationally, the share of women officers in the police stand at 8.2%. And many laws such as POSCO law, the domestic abuse, and the rape law, it all mandate the presence of women police officers. And yet, when we are not appointing women, how can we expect that women are there? In terms of the number of women who are filing the case, if I have there is a website called National Judicial Grid Data. So this is a government website, and it is being updated regularly. And it says only 8.21% of women who have been filing cases as compared to number of men who are litigating in the courts. So in the High Court, the situation is much worse, and we have only 1.8% of litigants who are women in the High Court. So Indian courts are no place for women, and the environment is very hostile, from societal barriers to infrastructural deficiencies, in terms of lack of bathroom spaces, or various other problems are there, and therefore you find less and less number of women in the courts. So it could be legal literacy, it could be bureaucratic approach, gender stereotypes. This is the case which has come, which has been reported this week only, and this is a judge she's working in UP, and she says that she faced sexual harassment from other the colleague judges, and she filed the case, and her case was not taken up, and she says no one listens, no one bothers, and if you complain, you will be tortured. So, she said that I want to die, and she wrote an open letter to the Chief Justice of India, and she demands that allow me to end my life. This is the kind of problem this particular woman judge is facing, and she says that it took 6 months and 1,000 emails even to just start an inquiry, and that inquiry was sham, and then her petition was it has gone to Supreme Court, but it was just dismissed in 8 seconds. So so these are the kinds of problem the judge is facing. So what about the ordinary women that we can really imagine? But despite this kind of system, women are fighting for their basic rights. So female advocates from the Supreme Court, there is a group, and they say that within the Supreme Court itself, there are 1,000 women lawyers and interns, and then they ask the Supreme Court registry to install a sanitary pad vending machine, and since the registry didn't listen, so we have to file the petition within the court, and when the judge ordered, then they have released 10 lakhs of rupees to have that kind of machine. In Delhi High Court, this machine is being installed in 2018, and it's only after the women lawyers, they made an application as the judge ordered to install. And later, some of the instructions have also been issued to have these kind of machines within the family courts, jail, police station, and government offices. So, so the kind of budget which is being allocated, it is very less. And in April 2023, Supreme Court has directed the central government to implement a uniform national policy on hygiene. So including the distribution of free sanitary pads to the students within the schools and colleges. But again, its implementation, as we have seen over past few months, it's not there. So again, I don't know, we have to take some actions. So if you talk about other kinds of way people are fighting, so we have this case of CBI CB Muthama, and she was the first woman to clear Indian Civil Service examination, and she has to contest the case in the court because during 1979 there was a rule within the Indian Civil Service examination which says that no married women shall be entitled as of right to be appointed to the services. And if a woman is a member of services, she shall obtain the permission from the government in writing before her marriage is solemnized. I mean, a woman has to take permission from the government to get married. So these kind of rules we have there, and then she challenged it, and she finally won this case. So if you talk about the recent cases, so there is one case recently which is being that there is a positive decision, and the court says that primitive mind of expecting married women to do all household work needs to change. This is a Bombay High Court decision. It came in September 2023. So then there is another Madras High Court judgment which says that homemakers are entitled to equal share in property. It talks about marital property. So when the couple is divorcing, the property, even if it is purchased in the name of the husband or wife, but it should be considered as a joint effort. So the judge says that women homemakers perform multiple tasks, and so she should be given. She is entitled to equal share in the property. We know of many of such decisions where where the courts have given positive judgment. So we have cases we have discussed over past few sessions, where in ABC versus State of Delhi, it talks about rights of unwed single mothers. We have the case of Navtej Singh Johar. It talks about LGBT rights. We have this case of a woman entry in Sabrimala temple. So there are a lot of positive decisions. But not in all cases, the courts are giving favorable decisions. In majority of decisions, they are reinforcing patriarchy. For example, in 2017, there was a case called Muhammad Farooqi's case. And in this case, it was a case of a rape where a student, a foreign student who came to India, and she got in touch with this person, and this person tried to rape her, and the court says that a feeble no means yes. So it formulated a different standard of consent for women who are intellectually or academically proficient. The judge stated that the woman has not resisted, and even if she has resisted, it may be constructed as a feeble resistance. So, these are the kind of cases we have seen in Hathras, Unnao, women wrestler case, Bilkis Bano case. In all such cases, how the police and other institutions are acting. And if you talk about, we have discussed this decision about how the judges are compelling the women victims to tie rakhi or get married to the rapist. So in terms of dowry related or domestic violence cases, the court construe the image of good wife who is subservient, submissive, and perfect. And any such deviation is considered as, they blame the victim. So the wife who refused to keep the Karwa Chauth fast and the court says that she is not acknowledging her husband, and therefore the man can obtain divorce on the grounds of cruelty. There's another case where the wife has been found guilty because she refused to cook food and serve meals to the husband and the members of his family, and used to move out of the home without permission. But the wife says that husband was harassing her because her family has refused to pay 50,000 as dowry. In another case, the court says that wife illness could not excuse her lack of cooperation for sex. So the courts are upholding the patriarchal logic. And if the woman who prioritize her career or wish to live separately, they are immediately labeled as bad wives. So there was a case where a woman say, the court says that if a woman is asking the husband to separate from her from his family, then it could be recognized as cruelty. So in some other cases, wearing of Mangal Sutra, Sindoor is seen as sign of being a good married woman, and the unwearing of unwillingness to wear this Mangal Sutra is treated as evidence of mental cruelty against the husband. So the courts are refuse to see the battered bodies and shattered minds, but they are emphasizing on these kind of issues. So we have seen how the hijab in the hijab case there was a split verdict, and in the Hadia's case, again the institutions are being deployed to find out that if there is a love jihad, so all these kind of things are going on in the courts. This is the courts are expected to hold the constitutional values and democratic ideals, but what is happening is sometimes the courts act like khap panchayats. So when the panchayats, they ban jeans for women and shorts for men, those kind of things. And we have seen in these cases how not applying sindoor or not wearing Mangal Sutra considered as crime, kind of cruelty. So to conclude, I'll just say that the court should act as a custodian of constitutional values, but what is happening is that sometimes and the courts often mirror the kind of patriarchy which is existing outside in the society. So so what is working and what is not working is, especially from the woman's perspective, if we need to have more supportive laws and policies at the local level, national level, and at the global level. We should sensitize the enforcement agencies, including lawyers, police, judges, and bureaucracy. We should have strong network and support structure, where women's organizations, families, and communities should come together. Again, it also depends on women's own awareness, subjectivity, and sensibilities. We need to have education and financial arrangements, livelihood opportunities, skill development programs. We need to have presence of institutions such as shelter homes, short stay homes, hostels and other services. Recently, there is a report where the one-stop centers which are being created and how they are not working in Delhi. This is, article 14.com. You can go to that website, and one of the reporters, she has done the study of the one-stop centers in Delhi, and she said that how these centers are not being utilized, even if sometimes they're not being opened, the infrastructure is not there, and if the infrastructure is there, there are no staff is not there, so the women are being misled and they're just being made to run around. So with this, I end the presentation, and we can take questions. Shweta, your voice is breaking. Yeah.
Yeah, am I audible now? Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am. It was a very insightful and an enlightening session. Yes, Ms. Debati Chaudhary, you have a question?
Thank you, ma'am, for the session. So I had a question regarding the point about having more women as judges in the Indian courts. So while like the current representation of women in the judiciary is abysmal, and there absolutely needs to be an increase in the number of women, but my question was around the fact that having women judges does not necessarily translate into having feminist judgments, because as we saw in the Sabrimala case also, the only dissenting voice was of Justice Indu Malhotra, and there has been a lot of feminist criticism to that. So yeah, but I don't really have a question, but that's just a thought that I had in my mind, that just representation does not translate, especially in the Indian scenario where caste patriarchy is such a huge driving force for every function of the society. So yeah, that.
It's a true thing that we have women ministers also, but again we are not having the kind of policies which we are expecting. But then again, it is again we have to talk about gender sensitization, we have to talk about ideology, we have to take into account various factors. But the thing is that if more women are there, at least even for my own personal kind of empowerment, at least the women should come out of the home. Right now the patriarchy has really crushed them. They are being locked inside the houses. And if you talk about the data on employment of women, we have very few. The report says less than 23% of women are being employed. Even if we're getting educated, we see that the 12th class, the results. If you talk about 10th class and 12th class result, they're outperforming outsiding. But what it when it comes to employment, the number of women are going less and less. And whether you talk about Supreme Court, whether you talk about Parliament, any kind of institutions, women are less and less in number. So why we are not there, especially in the higher positions? It's not that we lack, women lack some kind of ability, or we're totally equally competitive, but then why we are not there? At least we should be there. That is the only thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, participants may put the question in the Q&A box or raise their hand.
Should they have chair remarks?
Yes. I request the chair to share her remarks in the session. I'm sorry, ma'am, you are not audible.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear
Yes.
me? Yeah. Okay.
So I think the question about the women judges, we also have experience of extremely insensitive judgments given by the, in fact, take Flavia's case. After so many years of struggle, Flavia, and I used to accompany her to the court, and what she got was 750 rupees as maintenance for herself and 3 kids. Can you imagine, school going kids, when her husband was a very top executive in the Tatas, no? And this judgment was given by the judge, and she was constantly talking about about her abusive husband, that he's aging, he's diabetic, yes, he also has his future, and and he has his own necessities. How can we punish him like that? So she was saying, instead of being empathetic to, even when children gave testimony and there were first-hand evidences of the brutality of a husband, such judgment was given. We have also seen cases of POCSO cases where a 18 plus boy, a man who rapes a young girl, and judgments. In 1 week, there were 4 judgments which were given by the woman judge in the civil court, that this boy has a future. He has his old parents to look after. He is the only breadwinner in his family. This kind of arguments were given in the POCSO cases, no? Even when the girl was minor. Mathura judgment is a classic example of how the blame is put on the victim. So I think just by biologically being woman, you don't become feminist. But one thing is there, the argument that we are using, I think Shalu madam is right, that we are even talking about the women politicians. Some of the politicians have been more man than man themselves. But still, we use the argument of critical minimum, that if you have at least 33%, which is a political scientists say, that if you are in a group, you can raise your voice collectively. And when you have to survive in a man's world as a single person, you also imbibe the values of patriarchy, because you want to survive in that system, no? So even to feminize the whole, or you can say even to humanize the existing legal system and structures, it is important that more women are there. We have example of European Parliament. What was European earlier? What was the scenario in Europe? All these old boys, that means male politicians, were taking decision in the pub after parliamentary hours. The moment European Parliament adopted 40% reservation for women parliamentarians, then the complete ecosystem changed, because the kind of abusive language which men were using, addressing women's private parts, or the kind of dirty jokes and speeches that were going on in the parliament, the moment such thing happened, these 40% of women, they would collectively raise voice against that. Because simple things like, how many courts in India have a internal complaints committee? We have seen so many legal interns, they have complained on blogs about the sexual harassment that they are facing in by their superiors or by their seniors or the lawyers firm where they are working. In fact, after the whole Supreme Court's the Chief Justice, the complaint against them, so many, more than 85 young lawyers and the interns, they wrote in the blog about the kind of harassment and jokes and what happens in the office hours, and forcing a single woman to do overtime, and then the advances are made by this boss, legal companies, no? The most of the gossip that was going on in Bombay among the law firms, that now we will not hire a single woman lawyer. Then we had, in Bombay city, we had only one firm where woman lawyer was heading the institution, which is much less. So in Flavia's institute, I think so many young lawyers, they are joining, women lawyers are joining, because the kind of old boys club which is prevailing in the bar council, in the courtroom, the kind of double meaning sentences which are told, the dirty jokes which are said in the court, even when the woman is crying, the kind of horrible. In fact, I have been witness to Madhurshi Datta case where she was harassed by RPF, and the court hearing was going on. The overall atmosphere was extremely misogynist. The body language, the way they look at women. First of all, there are 100 or 200 men and there are 2 or 3 women, so I think that kind of culture will go. Once you have a more women lawyers, more women, I won't say that each and every policewoman is going to be feminist or compassionate towards a victim. Okay, we know that Maya Tyagi case, it was the woman officer who had instigated the constable to rape Maya Tyagi because she considered her to be a decoy. And even the Mrs. Indira Gandhi's response to Maya Tyagi was very, very unbecoming of, because she said when women's organizations really accompanied Maya Tyagi and met the Prime Minister, she looked at Maya Tyagi in an extremely hostile way, and she asked, "Oh, wearing so many ornaments, she had something necklace and earring and all. कहाँ से चोरी किया?" Imagine a Prime Minister of India talking to a rape survivor. She was a gang rape victim. She was raped by several policemen in the police station. Okay, and this was the response. As against that, when we went to meet with Maya Tyagi, we went to meet our president, Mr. Gyani Jail Singh. He was kind. He put his hand on Maya Tyagi's shoulder. There were tears in his eyes, and he said, "Beti, main tera dukh samajh sakta hu. You're my daughter. I can understand your pain." So such things happen, okay? But at the same time, what we need is that more and more level playing field for women, because then women don't have to become more man than man themselves. You can be happy as a woman when you are in a group, you are in collectivity, and you know that all of you, it also enhances your self-esteem, no? Because you don't have to prove to men's world, no? So I think even from that point of view, it is important. There is a strength in collectivity. Hello. Yeah.
Ma'am, Shalu Nigam, ma'am, for 1 minute.
Yeah.
Ma'am,
Shalu
yes.
Nigam.
You're still on mute.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
So when we have to talk about diversity, so diversity, when we talk about diversity within the courtrooms, within the parliaments, or within any institution, we talk about people from different, backgrounds. So people from Dalit background, people from tribal backgrounds, women. So more and more number of people from different religions. So more and more, people from different backgrounds you have, they could be, more kind of. Not say that everyone will act for for human rights or for empowerment of their own community, but then still it will bring out diverse points, in terms of the kind of judgments we are having, in terms of kind of policies we are having, the kind of laws we are having. So this is another area, where diversity is important.
Very important.
Yes, Ms. Arpita, you may ask your question.
Yes. To add to Professor Vibhuti Patel ma'am's, a short lecture, I would also like to highlight that recently our Union Minister of Child and Women and Child Welfare, she gave a statement saying that being on periods, menstruation is not a handicap. They don't require, paid leaves for that. There are two sides of arguments which come here. They can ask for a sick leave, or they can, take leaves, or they can work from home during that hour, take leave for the first day of period or second day of period, and then work from home. All these are alternatives which are being appeared, but yet I think this is so insensitive coming from a women minister, to give such statements publicly, and say that coming from a menstruating woman is she is speaking for half of the demography by herself, and I really agree with Vibhuti Patel ma'am that there has to be a proportionate representation that has to happen, and no amount of reservation that has already given to women can equate to the justice which has always been denied since ages to women. And my question to Shalu Nigam ma'am is, although there is disproportionate representation that we are seeing right now, what other alternatives can we come up with to, bring a balance in this, and also sensitize the public? Because my brother is a doctor, and when I always visited his hospitals, although I've seen women doctors being in scrubs, and which are very much similar to the nurses, and yet they are still addressed as nurse, sister, and they find it so difficult every time to voice out and say, no, I'm not a sister, I'm not a nurse, I'm a doctor, because not every time they have to wear a badge on their scrubs. So what are the alternatives, where we can bring a balance to the situation?
Yeah, in terms of this kind of thing, we are seeing in the courts also. Like if I go to the court as lawyer, and and it's talking about triple talaq judgment, when the case was being heard, or any other important cases are being heard, and you try to enter into the courtroom, you find it very difficult. You can't enter because the courtrooms, Supreme Court rooms are no, not very large rooms, not very huge rooms. It could fit in only limited number of people. And as a woman, you can't enter inside the courtroom because it's all occupied by men. Every
that
inch
is my
being
experience
occupied by men. So these are the kind of problems we are facing. And in terms of having that sanitary pad, vending machine, in terms of bathrooms, we are still fighting. In terms of, you go to the courts and Karkaduma courts, or court outside the Meerut, all in the outskirt of Delhi, we'll find that there no toilets are there. So these kind of things are there, and we have to sensitize. We have to fight. As a lawyer, we're filing applications within the courtrooms that, okay, please, ask the registry to issue more money to have more bathrooms, and these kind of equipments which are necessary. If I'm working here as a woman. So we talk about creche facilities and all kind of facilities, but we don't have in the courtrooms. Number of cases of women are coming to the courts, but court themselves, they have not these kind of things are not there. So these are the kind of issues. In terms of sensitization, what we can do is to really fight. We have to express our solidarity everywhere. In terms of lawyers, and we're talking about doctors. So okay, we have to fight as doctors. We have to, why if a male doctor is called as doctor and female doctor is not being given that kind of recognition. So what we have to do something about that. So sensitization, that awareness, that solidarity, first of all, solidarity among women groups, that has to come. We have
and also the budget, because see, when Ministry of Women and Child Development's budget is utilized hardly 2/3. That was my earlier, I don't know current data, but even if there is a massive unutilized fund under different heads, why can't they use it? It's a question of political will. I don't think it is a question of resources. No, I remember, like in Hindu, when Kalpana Sharma joined as a resident editor, the only gossip in Hindu office was that now we will have to have women's toilet. Can you imagine? Resident editor, she's your chief, but they thought that. And do you think that they don't have enough resources? Resources was there. It was in the most expensive area. The office was a huge office. Do you think they can't just have one women's toilet when you can have a whole block format? So it's a question of the prejudice and also the misogynist mindset, no? Where you are totally insensitive and you always want to usko sabak sikhana hai. We want to test her. How long will she continue as a lawyer? She will give up after 3-4 years. That's what they do, even the architects form, no? Where the women, because they have to, the site work and all, is a full of insecurity, and the whole, it's a very much a male culture. So I think that will go if there are more women. That one thing is that if there are more women, this kind of a support structure and the what you call infrastructure, that would come, because then you can collectively raise your voice.
Yeah, I raised my hand. Also, to add to the same point, very recently in Madhya Pradesh, an IAS officer, she was a female IAS officer, when she was questioned she was asked to, she was invited to a GHPS, government higher primary school, where she was to give a speech. And then one girl, she asked, although there is Janaushadhi Kendras, we are not receiving that 1 rupee sanitary pad which we were promised to receive. And she gave a statement, horrific statement, saying that आज ये sanitary pad मांगेंगे, कल ये मैं बोलना नहीं चाहती, फिर भी कॉन्डम मांगेंगे और फिर जीन्स मांगेंगे. This was very insensitive statement coming from an IAS officer. She must have gone through a lot of process. I mean, like I mentioned in the earlier sessions in last week, we do have an ethics paper, separate for such. I mean, this is very insensitive, which we
But it was
face.
very good that the uproar against her statement was so quick, and
Yes.
the state had to take action because there was a massive
The action was
opposition.
taken, and
Action
then
was
she was
taken,
later suspended also. But
Yeah.
yet we do see repetitions of such offenses happening in our society. And thank you, ma'am. Thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you. If there are any more questions. All right, then. Now, thank you, ma'am, for an insightful session. We will now move on with the presentations and discussion with the fellows. Yes, Ms.
will go
Arushi.
Oh, yeah, are we starting? Like,
Yes. Yes, I think we can start now. Ms. Arushi, would you like to go first?
yeah, sure, no problem. I'll just need to share my screen. If you can let me know if the poster is visible.
Yes, it is
Yeah.
possible.
Thank you. So good evening, everyone. Today I'm presenting on the topic of incestuous sexual abuse and how their survivors are silenced generation after next. Incestuous sexual abuse and rape refers to crimes committed by family members such as brothers, fathers, grandfathers, and uncles on the women and girls belonging to their own family. The poster on the screen has been drawn by me and it was inspired by a very personal experience. When I was 15 years old, I was sexually abused by an immediate family member, which lasted for almost 6 months. And when I shared this experience with my mother, she told me that I must be imagining it and that nothing like this had happened. Um, and her denial, the refusal of someone who I'd looked up to my entire life for, protection and guidance, it really led to me doubting my own abuse. I wondered whether anything wrong had happened with me or if I was making a big deal of a very small matter. And a few years later, I developed severe mental health issues like anxiety and depression. And the time spent in counseling and therapy, it led to me realizing that my precarious mental health was actually a result of the childhood sexual abuse. And recently, I made the decision to file a complaint against my abuser. And this was an attempt to take my power back and actually the first step in the journey towards justice for me. However, this step took a lot of courage because I did not have my family's support. For instance, when my grandmother found out about my experience and the step I had taken, she told me that I was equally to be blamed for whatever had happened and that I should not have filed such a false complaint. And she further told me that, men and boys have very natural instincts which they can't control and which they can't be blamed for. And that these incidents happen in every family. And what was perhaps the most shocking was when she mentioned that she herself and my mother had gone through similar experiences, but they had not spoken up against the men in their family because they were family members and they wanted to protect them. And she scolded me for kind of speaking out against my own abuser and not protecting him as they had. So as you can see, the concept of bura mat dekho, bura mat suno, bura mat bolo is very religiously followed in our Indian families. And the texts on the side of the images kind of highlight the comments that survivors of sexual abuse often have to hear. Not sure if they're clear, but it's things like, oh, these are, you are lying, or this is not a priority, these are natural instincts, this is a fake case, if you file a complaint, it will lead to a divided house, and you should not break your silence, and instead you should just avoid your abuser. So it was really sad to hear such comments from my own family members. And unfortunately, I have come to the realization that mine is not a very unique experience. My work at the Delhi Commission for Women has led me to understand that incestuous of abuse is actually a grave reality that is ignored in Indian society and considered a very taboo subject. In a research conducted by Majlis under their Rahat intervention, 644 FIRs registered over 8 years were studied by Mumbai police. And these were FIRs registered under Section 376 and Sections 4 and 6 of the POCSO Act. And it was actually found that 91% of the accused were known persons to the victim or to the survivor, and that close family members accounted for 18% of those accused. And this breaks the myth that the family is a very safe space for women and girls, and that rape and harassment only occurs outside the home in, dimly lit dark alleys when they're alone. So today I've put a story in front of you instead of just a statistic, and I hope that the audience present may also speak up against similar abuse in their own circles. Thank you. Stop sharing.
Thank you
Thank you,
so much.
Arushi, for trusting us. I know your intimate the pain you have shared with us, and I think we have now unique bond with you. But when you have yourself protested, why haven't you written in the poster, "Fight back"? We all grew up listening to the stories of incestuous advances and experiencing this kind of behavior personally also. And that's what resulted in an anti-rape campaign, because all of us, when we had a national conference against rape, each and every participant, there were 400 firebrand, known to be quote unquote firebrand women. All of them had faced similar situation. And when we came together, the only thing we could think of was a fight back and expose, naming it. So you are fighting back, but in your poster, you have not written.
I think I was trying to portray more of just what the reality is, because I know like a lot of survivors personally who either I wouldn't say they don't have the courage to fight back, but it's also a privilege to speak up. So for instance, if I'm speaking up right now, it's because I have the financial resources, or I have the support of people around me to be able to say that, okay, I want to speak. Because I feel like when it happens with you and your own family, it's a very different experience. Um, it's not as easy as speaking up against a stranger, because when you speak against a stranger, then everyone and anyone will come out and support you and kind of blame that person. But it took many years for and a lot of resources, a lot of support, a lot of advice to kind of take that step. So yeah, anyways, the poster was actually, I was trying to reflect the sad reality. But yeah, thank you so much for your support.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much for sharing your story.
It's very powerful in terms of its impact on the viewers. Yes, it is.
Right. Then we will move on with Ms. Debarti Chaudhary's presentation. I will share the screen. Give me a moment, please. Yes, is it visible? May I know?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Shweta, for sharing this screen.
No problem.
I'm actually joined from my phone, so yeah. Um, so the presentation here in front of you So it's a part of my ongoing research on the impact of medical evidence in the prosecution of rape cases. So here I have picked up a specific aspect of this, which is the fingers test, the two fingers test. So I would just have a brief about the present, legal judgments on the case, and then I'll talk a little about the brief research that I have conducted myself. The next slide, please. So the two fingers test, so I'm referring to a 2003 judgment where the Supreme Court basically challenged the central argument of the High Court, where the judgment was given on the grounds of the sexual history of the victim, and because the doctor said that the victim was accustomed to sexual intercourse, which the decision was derived at through a two fingers test. But the Supreme Court challenged this argument and said that the sexual history of the victim is in no way relevant for the proceeding of the concerned case trial, and that the two fingers test was also not conclusive proof of a negative assault. The next slide. Then when we come to 2013, the Verma report, they denounced the two finger test due to its subjective and very intrusive nature. So the test was finally outlawed in 2014 in India by the Indian Health Ministry because it is at its basis a severe violation of a woman's right to privacy. And especially in the aftermath of sexual violence, this forms, it almost traumatizes and sexually violates the woman in a way when such an incident is repeated on her body. And sometimes, though consent is taken on paper, to be able to give an informed consent also comes from a place of privilege. And often, especially women from marginalized communities, they might not even be aware of what they're signing up for. And then to have a doctor, and in a lot of cases, a woman doctor is also not available. So to have a male doctor, again, specifically violate her privacy in such a case is of immense concern. The next slide. So the two fingers test, I'm guessing everyone is aware of it, but it is basically the practice of inserting the fingers into the vagina city. If she was raped. Now, this has been it continues to be illegally and unethically accepted and employed by the medical community, and then consequently by the judicial system. Now, I've done a brief research, and I've quoted 3 particular cases here from states of Telangana, Maharashtra, and Odisha. So I was looking at the most caste atrocity prone states because that is another aspect of my research. So from there, these 3 cases, I will just mention one small excerpt from the state of Maharashtra versus Samir 2014 case, where the judgment quotes that the findings are not supporting the examination chief to the prosecutrix that she was sexually assaulted. Because if it was really the case of rape, then there should be marks of struggle on the part of body of the prosecutrix. The medical report is showing that the hymen was ruptured, but it is an old rupture and it admits 2 fingers easily. There is no tenderness. So this case resulted in an unconditional acquittal of the accused. So this, I'm just trying to point out very briefly about how the fingers test continues to be used and the kind of secondary victimization that victim survivors are subjected to. The next slide. So that's the message that I'm leaving with everyone here, that say no to the 2 fingers test, say no to secondary trauma, and of course, stand with victim survivors. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. I think you have said no to two-finger test, but you should also say what is to be done. That is the circumstantial evidences. No, if the case should rest on circumstantial evidences, I think that is a very important thing, because even in case of Mathura, it was everything happened in front of all villagers. No, people were screaming, they had locked the door. So all these circumstantial evidences were enough to prove that the rapist had perpetrated sexual violence. That did not happen. And two-finger test was because Mathura, they said that she was accustomed to sexual activity. So I think you should also say that if no to two-finger test, then what next? How do you prove? Because medical report is most important, or even the testimony or FIR, all the evidences after the episode tragedy takes place are very important. No? So circumstantial evidences should be. In Nirbhaya case, they went by circumstantial evidences. No, yes, atrocities have happened, but medical report was not the only thing on which the decision was taken. It was the circumstances under which it happened. No? In the moving bus, what all happened, the testimony of her boyfriend, how she was thrown away. All these things were taken into consideration in the judgment.
Yes,
The
ma'am.
thing is
Thank you, ma'am.
also the medical textbooks, if you see, because they're still using this kind of language within the medical textbook, and the students,
Yeah.
medical students are learning that, and even in the law schools also, so the lawyers are also referring to those kind of textbook and that material. So that needs to be somehow challenged at some level.
And I think that Sehat, the gender in medicine, no, that report that say they got that sentence removed, that women and child's testimony should be believed with pinch of salt. No, the casualty ward, when the first person, like after the atrocity, where do they go? You go to the casualty ward and you report. No, but if this is what the doctors in casualty ward have internalized, then they are not going to even write. I remember in cases after cases of rape, like we had a Narsama rape case where she was raped by 8 people in the Basti, and we had gone to hospital. They did not even write sexual assault. They just wrote injuries on several parts of the body, and they gave her paracetamol and means the painkiller and sent her back. Even when such a major atrocity, and we were there accompanying, because doctors just they go with they have a mindset that women's testimony should be taken with pinch of, they imagine, they hallucinate. That's a very Freudian thinking, because Freud also said, no, when all the women who were approaching him for psychotherapy, they were talking about sexual violence, they were talking about marital rape, they were talking about incest. But Freud always said that it explained it in terms of Electra complex and women and children. Even children talked about child sexual abuse, and he inferred it in his notes. He wrote that they were hallucinating, they were bad dreams, they were imagining. So I think still that mindset is there in the medical fraternity. So I think it's very important to focus on circumstantial evidence.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Bharti, for such an impactful presentation. Yes, Ms. Arpita, you could go next. Ma'am, you're on mute.
Yes. So am I audible now?
Yes, yes.
Yes. So my
So-
case study is
Sorry
can
to
go on.
interrupt. Yeah, you could.
yes.
From beginning, yeah. Left top. Yes.
Left top. Yeah,
From
from
beginning.
yes. Thank you. Thank you for the assistance. Yes. So my essay narration would be on the topic a critical appraisal of gender justice in India through the lens of right to equality. I'm sorry, I couldn't type that a bit long, title. So this essay would be about not a particular or one specific case study or even case law or even a statute law. This will be an amalgamation study upon various laws which are repeatedly quoted, in the judgments, and which have been referred time and again. So there has to be some critical appraisal, critical analysis that needs to be done. And the agenda is, of course, I'll be introducing what gender justice means, and then constitutional provisions which are in support of gender justice and maintaining the balance between all the genders, not just men and women, and challenges and disparities and pathways for challenge, as you can see. So gender justice in India, it has been, uh, it has been a foundational stone since the colonialism and evolution of gender rights and impact of colonialism. We do have witnessed a lot of legal changes in our constitution, and also some laws which has been stated by the courts, and then certain women movements and legal reforms that followed after women's movements. And then constitutional provisions also will be discussed, and also they'll be evaluated. There are some constitutional laws which I think I have already mentioned in my abstract, and I do need to update upon that. So it will be updated in 2 days. So and then challenges and disparities, social norms and stereotypes, violence against women, access to education and healthcare, economic empowerment. So and then pathways for change, empowerment programs. There are already certain empowerment programs which have paved a lot of way for developmental causes, but there has to be some more, and then there has to be some changes that is expected by Administrative Reforms Commission. A second report, there is a reference which has been included in my report. And policy reforms, also new policy formulations, and then community engagement, how we can include civil societies and women work groups to come together, join hands, and then create an impact in a big picture. And then education and awareness, which can be started from elementary school, and such suggestions have been included in my report. And then concluding is reflection on the progress so far, how much we have come through, and then how far we still yet have to travel, and future outlook. Of course, we must see how any policy that has been favoring one gender or not favoring one gender has impacted in a whole circle to the society. And then call to action and embracing the diversity in the end. And I would like to also mention that I'll be depending upon mostly secondary data, because for me, I have time constraint, and also I am already committed to some other work. I'm already a volunteer teacher in GHPS, so I do have to make some time. So it's quite impossible for me to collect first-hand data. So I'll be depending mostly upon secondary data. And if there are any suggestions from the panel, I would quietly welcome that. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I have sent my suggestion about whether you will go going through the
Yes,
case law, but also when you
yes.
say will you go beyond gender binary? So you will LGBTQIA.
Yes, ma'am. I will.
You will.
Yes, yes. LGBTQIA, and also third gender
Disability.
bill, which was, yes, third gender bill, which was recently passed.
Yeah.
I am also discussing about that. But again, every discussion will be brief and very crisp, on to the point. So,
Yeah.
yes, ma'am.
And the rights of persons with disability, that will also.
Yes, ma'am. Also, rights of persons with disability, marginalized section, and men who are denied right to equality, and also right against constitutional remedies also. That also has been discussed, ma'am. I would like to share a draft by tomorrow, if to the same email, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah. In that case, I'll definitely share the draft. Yeah.
Be comprehensive.
Okay. Are there any more participants who wish to present today? Okay. I don't think there are any. Okay. Then, ma'am, we can go for. Okay, now we can go for the ending chair remarks. So I request
Yeah.
Professor Vibhuti ma'am to share her closing remarks.
Yeah, I think day 5 of this course has been very interesting. As Elsa Maria's presentation was very important, because this is one thing that was missing, was that how can technology aid? Yes, there are so many horror stories about how technology have made lives of women very insecure, but at the same time, Elsa Maria's presentation and the work which they are doing in several countries, I think that has shown that we can use technology for our for women's safety, and the Safe City project about which she enlightened us is very important. The main thing is to training, massive training, and the assertiveness training, that fear that women have. I think how to overcome fear and speak out. That is a major challenge that we are facing. I think National Commission for Women has started a program for the schools and colleges, through the colleges through Women Development Cell, to make them aware about technology-enabled solutions. So it's very important. Knowing IT Act is very important. The various clauses of IT Act is very important. The discussion on this whole Instagram group, I think it is not only in Delhi that it happened, but this kind of boys' locker rooms, they are very, because police say that there are several such groups existing, and they are creating terror among the cyber terror among the young minds. So this is a very important lesson that we learned by today's presentation. The presentations by the participants are also very good in terms of aesthetic appeal, the impact it has on the viewers, whether it's a poster on child sexual abuse, or the agony of a child who faces such violence, or the incestuous rape, comes out very, very succinctly. Even the poster, the presentations in which there were several, this thing on 2-finger test, they are also conveying the message very powerfully. And the last one on the legal system through gender lens, I think it's a very comprehensive presentation. We are so proud that we have such a proactive and prepared the participants who have done massive homework before joining the course. So we are working hard, and participants are also working hard. Resource persons have also put in their best in this course, in all these 5 lectures. And now in the concluding one, I think we are going to have Dr. Professor Govind Kelkar, who will also shares a global experience and also the national level experience. So we are going to have a very rewarding 6 days of this course. And this is the befitting tribute to the collective campaign and collective work that is happening during these 15 days of activism from 25th November to the 10th of December. And we are continuing that. This is the contribution of IMPRI towards that campaign. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. With the chair's permission, we can go for vote of thanks.
Please go.
Thank you. As we come to the end of day 5 of Law and Public Policy Youth Fellowship 2.0 cohort, a 1-month immersive online law and public policy awareness certificate training course and internship program, I, Shweta Shankar, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI, New Delhi. We are grateful to our experts for the Day 5 session, Professor Vibhuti Patel, Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigam, and Ms. Elsa Mary D. Silva for taking out their valuable time and giving us an opportunity to learn from this online certificate program. We thank our chair, Professor Vibhuti Patel, and lead advisor, Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigam, for convening the session. We thank all our participants who have raised pertinent questions and actively participated in today's deliberation and also very impactful presentations. We look forward to welcoming you next Saturday, that is 23rd of December at 6 p.m. for our day 6 of the certification course. We are grateful if you're watching us later on YouTube or listening to us on our various podcasts or reading our publications. We hope you continue to join in future to our IMPRI #WebPolicyTalk and #WebPolicyLearning. Wishing you a good day. Thank you.